Okay, folks, it is 9 o'clock, so we'll begin. I am not live streaming today, but I am recording this and I could post it up on the Step Into Cafe Americana site. All right, so good morning. It is Tuesday, August 26th, 2025. Uh, this is the substitute morning meeting since the 2A is on vacation. So, my name is Professor Kenny, and I'm joined today by my good friends Dean Langford from Ohio, Dean, and Chris Simmons from Georgia, but you're in Memphis today, Chris?
That's right.
Yeah. So, we have a bunch of topics to talk about, but we're going to jump into the National Guard thing. Even though we covered it yesterday, we'll start with that because Chris wasn't here and he has some good thoughts about it. So we'll start with the National Guard, Trump getting involved. Chris, just to let you know, my take on it quickly was going to Baltimore is a huge mistake because if that's what he wanted to do, because Brandon Scott, the young mayor there, has got his own programs going on there that seem to be working. So I don't know why he would even go near that. So I'll turn it over to you, to Chris. What's your thoughts on this whole thing?
Yeah, my unfortunately my primary thought is that the effort is not based in good faith.
Right.
It's based on clicks and feeding some narratives that have some pretty unsavory beginnings. Um, Specifically, if you follow the logic of this, these black-run cities don't care about protecting their mostly black residents because, as some conservatives like to point out when it's convenient for them, oh well, most of the crimes affecting the black community, so we're going to go and save the black folk from their horrible leaders. But don't you think that the black mayor and the black police chief and all these other black city council members, whose mothers and grandmothers are the ones most affected by the crime, don't you think they're trying to solve the crime? Do you think they're just trying to let criminals roam the streets? No, they're not. If he really wanted to help, he would get them more money so they could hire more police. The other problem is he's taking people, the National Guard is not trained to do this kind of work. And I don't believe that they actually can do everything police can do. So there's a big presence, but can they really do full police work? I don't think so. So you're logically not applying the most effective force, and the basic premise suggests that the folks that the locals elect to protect them aren't trying to protect them, which I think is a pretty weak premise. So I don't have a lot of respect for what is being done. And then of course the unsavory part of it is it's yet another racially tinged move on Trump's part. There's no there's no coincidence that he's going after black run cities. And white people may not agree with that, but I can tell you black people think that.
Yeah, we when we talked about it yesterday, we covered how having troops in the streets is not normal. It's not a normal look for America. It might be a good deterrent, but this is all politics. He's playing politics with the National Guard. And I looked at it like this. It's a winning issue for him politically because he can have the troops in there for, he's only allowed to have them for 30 days, supposedly, right? But let's say he gets an extension, they're in there for 2 months, and they can argue, oh, look how the crime went down. And then when they pull the troops out, crime will go back up. And then they'll say, see, we left it back to you guys, and you didn't deliver. But when I had the guard in there, I won. I cleaned up the crime. It's all and this is all Stephen Miller, by the way, President Miller, I always call him. And my last point, and then I'll turn it over to Dean on this, is um oh, I'm sorry, it escaped me. I had another point on this, but it's okay. Dean, follow up on it and then we'll move on.
Yeah, just jump in when you remember the point, or if you do. I think it's more basic than that. I'll say that crime is bad, and some incidents or additional incidents in D.C. Um, um, forced the president's hand. He wanted to get rid of the crime. He gave this a shot. Is there politics involved in this? Yeah, absolutely. And for some reason, the Democrats seem to step on their tongues trying to work their way around this. It's been successful in DC for the time that it's been there, and yes, it's more folks coming in. Yes, you can say that, put more money into the problem, and that could take care of it too. I just don't understand why the Democrats aren't turning this into a bipartisan approach instead of saying, look, our crime is down. What we're doing is working here, and still the largest cities with the largest amount of crime that they've got. So I'm not clear on that, but it is a winning issue for President Trump to go in there and to have the Democrats on the other side of it. Chris, I take your point that he's going to. I don't. I take your point that these are black-run cities. I think he's just going to the place where most of the crime is. And it happens to be and he's got targets on Baltimore, New York, Chicago, and DC. Obviously, he's got more flexibility for the DC takeover. And I would just love to see the Democrats stop taking the bait and turn this into a bipartisan push.
Hey, Dean, there's higher crime rates in several cities, including the one I'm sitting in right now, Memphis, way higher than DC, which have Republican governors. So why doesn't he go ask those Republican governors why they let their biggest cities, Memphis, St. Louis, why don't they have their crime under control? Why is he going after Pritzker and calling him names about his weight, which is so unpresidential and tacky, first of all? Why doesn't he go after these Republican-run states and their biggest cities and their crime problems, which have, if you want to talk about forcing his hand, go look at the crime rates for Memphis, which I'm sitting in right now. Way higher than DC, way higher.
Yeah, and like we said, this is politics, at its high, this is politics at its highest
And it's
gameplay.
lowest, and it's
Yeah,
lowest.
yeah, and you could argue it's low because this is, of course, he's not going to deal with Republican, uh, governed states. He's going to go after the blue states, and that's
Yeah, I see him as on the list. I mean, I
yeah.
I I don't disagree that he shouldn't go in there as well. But if he gets double bonus points by rapping on the Democratic run ones, I don't understand why he wouldn't start there.
Wait till the midterms. He's going to get double bonus points with black voter turnout.
Well, we'll see. We'll see about that. Oh,
Yeah, well,
but the
absolutely,
the
yeah,
the two
definitely.
the point I wanted to bring up to finish this off was that there's that argument. Well, you give them money to hire more police. And I think is art because they're saying, he cut the budgets, he didn't get, he's not giving out the money to these people. Well, when you had the money, you couldn't stop the crime. That's his argument, or that can be his argument. Well, we gave you the money when you had the money, you didn't stop the crime. So why are we going to give you the money? That could be an argument. The other point is, lastly, is Governor Hochul in New York didn't have any problem adding National Guard troops to the subways and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So, maybe Andres, you'll come in later and talk about that part of it. So, but it's just an interesting thing. Me personally, what is Trump going to do if he puts the National Guard in Chicago and a National Guardsman gets shot and killed? How's he going to handle that? If that happens. You know what I'm
That'll
saying?
be his excuse for the war he wants to start, so he can declare martial law, whatever it is he wants to
Yeah,
declare.
then he's going way too far. He's going way too far. I mean, and I'm not really on board with using the National Guard as political foil. It's not cool. If there's a crime issue and the local police can't handle it, and as we've talked in the past, Dean, and they say yes, we welcome the National Guard. If the chief of police or whatever says that, that's one thing. But just to arbitrarily do it, or threaten it, that's another. But listen, it's politics. The Dems are having a hard time arguing against it. So it's like I said yesterday, Nina Turner could argue for the Dems on this, but I don't know many other people who can. All right, so let's move on. Chris, are you ready to handle the Intel deal?
Yeah.
Okay. So just let's introduce it and go ahead, Chris, introduce what's going on there and then talk
So
about
in a unprecedented move, Trump has had the administration buy roughly 11% stake in the U.S. Chip maker Intel.
it.
Now, part of this is because they want to encourage the um, reduction of reliance on chips from foreign sources and boost up American chip makers. Um, and I guess historically, the view has been that the government will give industries money or do for things to facilitate an industry. And what the taxpayer is going to get back is either the security protection or job creation. In this case, Trump is basically saying, well, we should get some money back too, because they're making a lot of money. I mean, conceptually, I'm not that opposed to that. I think some of the unintended consequences, though, that will be concerning to some other companies like NVIDIA and AMD. So now they're competing with Intel and the US government. That's not exactly a laissez-faire, small government approach. But then I guess what this really is another indication of is that the concepts that people used to define the Republican Party by, one of which was small government, that's out the window.
Hmm.
Trump is nothing but small government. I mean, next he's going to be telling us what kind of cereal we should eat in the morning. He's getting into all kinds of stuff. And so the question is it still going to be a level playing field on a regulatory basis for these other companies in the U.S.? Uh, is Intel going to get favorable treatment if they want to do an acquisition? Are they going to get favorable tax treatment? Are they going to get favorable treatment in other ways that the government can impact, which creates a very unlevel playing field? And the Cato Institute, which is fairly libertarian and I don't think liberal, has come out with expressing a lot of concerns about it. So again, it's not horrible, but I think it's another level of government involvement in business that most business people really don't like. Now, the last thing I'll say about it is the Chinese have been doing this stuff for
Yes,
decades.
100%.
They do all kinds of stuff to boost their companies. And I'm sure what Trump is kind of saying is, the U.S. has had one hand tied behind his back because we leave it to the companies to take care of us, and then we're going to team with our companies. So I think this is a debatable one. Not something that I think people can just like, throw up their hands and cry, not like some other things that the administration does.
Yeah.
So I think, it remains to be seen whether it's fair or not.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were going to 100% agree on this. Look, I'm waiting for Intel foundry factories to be built in Ohio. As a part of the CHIPS Act, Intel was going to put or is still planning on putting those factories in Ohio. I don't know how this impacts that, but to your larger point of the U.S. government, they would say all they're doing is changing the grants from the CHIPS Act into actual equity. And I think you said it right, Chris. They're saying, look, these are going to be non-voting shares, but does this give an unfair advantage? What does AMD say? What does other potential competitors inside the U.S.? What does that say for if a deal comes up? Does that put the finger on the scale for Intel? To your point, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing. Overall, I don't like the direction that it goes. I think you're right that he's saying, look, in a completely open and capitalistic society, if China was playing by the same rules, then we wouldn't have to do something like this. But it's not open, so we've got to make sure that America remains first, or we at least have a viable chip industry inside of the United States. I would like to see it go a different way. I'd like to see them exit almost as fast as they make this, or as fast as they could get out of this, because I don't like the overall ramifications for later on. Unintended, I think you said correctly, unintended consequences down the road. And frankly, I don't want to give our other friends that are already saying on the left side of the aisle, hey, you don't like that socialism, but you didn't have any problem putting money into Intel. I think it can be strategic at times, but let's exit this as quickly as possible.
I would say the other part of it is when does it end? What other companies are we gonna as a country gonna buy into? And part of it too is he's like this didn't cost us anything because he's not giving them grants or whatever these companies get. These little um whatever they get to, in terms of tax breaks and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting. I'm kind of with you, Chris. It's like more of a wait and see with this, but it's interesting that this guy, I think every minute of his life, he's thinking deals. Like, where can I make a deal? Where can I get some more money? I don't know. It's just a interesting kind of concept.
I actually think every minute of his life he's thinking about how can I do what hasn't been done before and how can I
Hmm.
be special.
Yeah.
And whatever he can do to go against tradition and what people did yesterday, he's going to do that.
Yeah.
And the deal making background, which I also have, and I understand this mindset, it helps you do that.
Right.
That mindset helps you not do the standard. But
Hmm.
I think he wakes up every morning honestly thinking, what am I going to do that's going to finally get me on Mount Rushmore? I mean, all this Nobel Peace Prize talk is a prime example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to Ohio for a moment, the reason that the Intel gave is that these new chipsets that are coming out are supposed to be start rolling out in 28, 29, or it might be as late as 2030. Um, they don't have any customers for these. So if the president wants to get on board and do his sales and start, let's make a deal for the new chipsets so we can get those factories built in Ohio. I may be, all politics being local, I may be swayed that this could be a good thing for the United States and more specifically Ohio.
Yeah. Dean, let's go on to your topics that we talked about this
Yeah,
morning.
let's talk about flag burning. I got a quick
Yes.
synopsis here. Uh, Yesterday, President Trump signed an executive order directing the Justice Department to prosecute individuals who burn or desecrate the American flag. And it challenges the 1989 Supreme Court ruling in Texas versus Johnson that protects flag burning as free speech. Uh, just off the record here, or I guess we are recording, but it was funny the way that Professor Kenny set this up. He set it up as President Trump against Scalia, and that they've got this ongoing debate. And Chris rightfully said, "Hey, isn't Scalia dead?" But this is what I thought that was funny while we were
He's
having our
he's he's
coffee.
he's he's physically dead.
He's pushing up daisies, but he was a part of the Texas v. Johnson, and he was on the affirmative saying that it is protected speech. But Trump stated that overall, the country, all over the country, they're burning flags. All over the world, they're burning the American flag, claiming that flag burning incites riots at levels we've never seen before, and that the area goes crazy. And so uh, he ordered Attorney General Pam Bondi to pursue charges for related crimes like disturbing the peace or property destruction, and to explore litigation to clarify First Amendment exceptions, especially for acts that might incite violence or constitute fighting words. And it also directs immigration authorities to revoke visas or seek removal of foreign nationals involved in flag desecration. So I'm going to take more of I think, a libertarian view in this. And look, I see this as protected speech, and I don't. I think they got it right in 1989, and I think it should. Personally, I think it should stand. I have no problem with folks that are coming in on visas and using that as a um, um, I guess a degree of if they want to investigate that and flag, to incite riots, and that was a part of it, and they want to use that as a part of that for revoking visas. I've got less of an issue with that. Overall, I'm not surprised that President Trump has done this. He's testing birthright citizenship in I think the 14th Amendment. He's testing that. He's testing the limits, and he's willing to go and listen to arguments and abide by arguments made in the judicial branch. So my feeling is that it should be protected, but I don't have any problem testing the boundaries.
So, Dean, why do you think, with all the problems we have in the world, why is this a focus of the man you voted for?
Flood in the zone, brother.
Okay, I have a more specific analysis of it. Uh, it's something else. Like who's normally associated with flag burning? Liberals. This is another own that lives. This is one of these. I don't care that the court sided with those crazies. We're the common sense. This is a variant of the silent majority BS that Nixon and those guys were putting out before. We don't care what the court said years ago. We don't like it. The next thing we're going to know, they're going to ban T-shirts that have the FU finger on it and whatever else the Christian right doesn't like people to say in public. We're heading that way, and it's and I'll tell you this too. Um, it's a really effective way to get people emotionally worked up so they don't notice that, oh, those prices that were supposed to come down on day one are still going up. Gee, inflation is still in existence. But in a month or two, I think people are going to be paying a little bit more attention to their grocery bill than whether somebody burned a flag.
Yeah, and of course, like the burning flag issue is always like the transgender uh biological males playing sports issue. It's how many people do we know, how much flag burning is actually going on out there, right? How many biological males are actually playing sports,
Exactly.
competing with women. But politically, it's an 80-20 issue. You ask anyone, do you approve of people burning the flag? You're gonna 80% will say no, I don't approve of it. Are they gonna fight somebody because they're burning the flag? Probably not. They don't care. Like you said, eventually they'll say, you know what, milk is $4 a gallon or whatever it is, five fifty a gallon, and I don't really care about the burned flag that was made in China. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So that's that's where it is. But the Republicans and Trump's team is they're expert at exploiting 80-20 issues. And then it forces the Democrats to have to either defend or support. And it's very difficult when you're on the defensive like that. How do you like I said, Nina Turner, it would be the best of that. She would probably
But
just say,
Kenny,
yes,
Kenny,
sir. Yes, sir.
you guys you have this this unfounded narrative that the Dems are on defensive, on the
Yeah.
defense.
Yeah.
Trump's approval ratings drop every week.
Well,
The
he's still in the
country,
40s,
the
Chris.
country is not happy with how he's conducting the presidency.
Hmm.
And that's a fact. They're not happy. Even a bunch of folk who voted for him are not happy with him.
Yep, and we're going to have to see how that plays out in the midterms. But Chris, I say it all the time. The Dems can't get above 30% approval rating. So,
That's right. You think
uh,
we suck? You
you know,
Dems suck more than the Republicans right now. Okay, it's a race to the bottom.
I told you before, the Dems approval rating is a function of the fact that they're not in charge. The degree to which the people who voted against the Republicans last time really despise the Republicans now has only increased. Trump has done nothing to bring anybody to the Republican voting camp that didn't vote for them last time. And he's done a whole lot. Go ask some of the Latinos who voted for Trump last time, who now realize that he didn't just mean he was going to get the criminals. He was going to get their neighbor down the street who fixes their car and deport them. And at the same time, he's not lowering those prices he promised he'd lower them. Let's
yeah,
see what the
That would be more.
Latinos. Let's see what the
That would be more.
Latinos do in the next election.
Yeah, that would
well,
be.
listen,
That argument would
yeah,
be more believable to me if the Democrats had believable leadership right now. I think you'd agree. There's just a complete leadership vacuum, not
Oh,
in being in charge of the country.
Gavin's bringing it. He's bringing it.
Yeah,
yeah,
and
but
I'm
Chris,
trying to
his
figure
record
out,
in
is he more like
California is
Jeb
so
Bush
bad
or is
that
he more like, oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, and I've already argued the Gavin Newsom thing ad nauseum, but Gavin's record in California is so bad that when he runs, he'll get killed by the Democrats, whoever it is, Andy
Yeah.
Bashir or somebody. They'll just destroy him because his record is just disastrous in
He's
California.
way smoother than the rest of them.
He's
He's
very smart. Listen, I think he's a great politician. Don't get me. I think he's good looking. He's tall. He's articulate. He knows how he can play that game. But is he
Hey Kenny,
authentic?
if the
Yes.
Republican field in 2016
Mm-hmm.
couldn't destroy Trump based on his
Yep.
horrendous life history,
Right.
I think Gavin can handle
Yeah,
himself
but listen,
with
Chris,
those Democrats.
it still comes to governing. Like Trump didn't govern anything, right? So that's how he was able to skate by. They couldn't hold his record on anything except he didn't pay his contractors or whatever, right? He was able to skate that. But Newsom has a solid record of comes into California as governor with a budget surplus. Now he's 68 billion in the hole. He can't put out fires. He has problems with water. He has
God
a
puts out
illegal
fires, Kenny.
illegal immigration
Politicians don't put
problem.
out fires. God puts out
Yeah,
fires.
well, listen, it's going to be hung on him though because he's the governor. You know what I mean? I get it, but I'm just saying when if anybody's going to debate Gavin Newsom, listen. I brought this up in the thing with Botcha and Dan. Um, Gavin Newsom tried to they had a little debate, him and DeSantis, what in 2023, and Newsom couldn't get his mojo going in that debate because DeSantis kept just hitting him with his record in California, and he had to keep trying to defend himself instead of being going on the offensive.
You
So
mean Newsom's horrible record of moving California from the fifth to the fourth largest economy in the world? You mean that horrible record?
Yeah, that horrible record. That's 68 billion in a deficit. Yeah, from a budget surplus in that
Well, the
short a
American
period of
people have
time.
proven they don't care about deficits.
Well,
Look at the
that's
big,
a fair
beautiful
now
bill.
that's a fair argument. That's a very fair argument. If they ignore that, if they don't care about, but I don't know if his Democratic opponents are going to let him get away with that. We'll see. He
Well,
might
here's the
listen.
segue.
He just might come out and destroy them all in the beginning, like Trump did to the 17 Republicans. He might, but we'll see.
Here's a segue for you, Professor Kenny.
Yep.
If the Republicans are able to keep the current coalition that they have together, then I think the Republicans will be in good shape in 28. But will they be able to keep that coalition together? There's your
Well,
segue.
yep. Thank you. And I apologize to the group. I haven't eaten. I was up at 5 in the morning, so I'm trying to eat and do this at the same time. I apologize. That could be kind of rude, but I'm starving. All right. Anyway, so nice segue, Dean. Thank you. So in the Washington Post, there was a little article about Trump's coalition and how he's expanded it. But the problem for him is that these people that he's coalesced around, they have a lot of problems with him. So he's been able to hold it together. Like he got the big, bad, beautiful bill passed, but it wasn't popular with the people who passed it. So the question is whether he can hold this whole coalition together. I would say this. I would say if the Democrats can make a comeback in the midterm elections and retake the House and close the gap in the Senate, I think then now that coalition's going to break. And because look at it this way. Remember when he came in, Trump had all about Elon Musk. Well, who was against Elon Musk more than anybody? Steve Bannon. But that's but that's his coalition. Look at Marjorie Taylor Greene, all the things she's opposed to with like supporting Ukraine, Israel, that kind of stuff. But these people are still sticking with Trump. But if something goes south on him, I don't know if he'll be able to keep that coalition together. And then that'll be very fractured. And then
So
that'll
Kenny,
hurt J.D. Vance down the road. Yep.
Well,
but for
Chris, let
people
me do
who
this real quick first, if I could. This comes from a Washington Post article that Professor Kenny found,
Yep.
and there's 6 coalitions that it
that's what I was
talks
going to
about.
ask him
Yeah.
to explain.
Oh.
Dave. Thank
Yes.
you.
There you
Yeah.
go. So I got it right here. Traditional conservatives,
Yep.
the MAGA base, Christian nationalists, the tech bro or crypto folks, libertarians and the populist wing, and then working class voters. So I think Professor Kenny put it right. You take those 6, and it can be fractious, and keeping that together. If anybody watched Real Time with Bill Maher, um, who is by no means, he is definitely not a fan of President Trump, but there was something that Trump put in about that was going to be pro marijuana, and I can't remember what it was, but the bigger point that Bill Maher was trying to make is that Trump does a very good job of finding these small issues with a small coalition, or a coalition of folks that love this one particular point, and then taking it over. Who'd have thought that the Republicans would take over the marijuana issue? Now, for traditional conservatives, they love the tax breaks. For the MAGA base, they love the protectionism of tariffs and
Yes.
And the race baiting.
and the immigration. Well, the crackdown on the immigration.
And they're America first. They don't want to give any aid to Ukraine. They don't want us involved in that. And
Right. With the Christian nationalists, you got the cultural, the trans issue, the the wokeness going too far. You've got crypto. I don't understand so much around here, but tech and crypto. He's got his crypto thing, which I don't know a lot about, but the deregulation in that particular area. The one that, and then libertarians and populists, I think those guys are staying. The working class is an independent group. I think they like the protectionism that we've got right now. They like the immigration enforcement, but this is a group that I think the Republicans, once Trump is gone, has to keep their eye on. So I think this is what I think this is what any party tries to do: make their tent larger and keep it together. And to date, Donald Trump and the Republicans, I think, Professor Kenny, this is the point that you were making. He's just done it better than anyone else in recent history.
Yeah, he's just they all acquiesce to this guy, so we'll see.
Well,
All right, so
he's tapped into a lot of unrequited anger in some places.
yeah,
Uh,
listen, yeah, you know what I think? I really think if and a lot of things can change in the next year, especially with Ukraine and stuff. But I think let's say we keep going at this kind of level of politics. The midterm elections will determine everything. If there's a big shift back to the Dems, well, you know what, Trump, all of that stuff you did just fell apart. It didn't hold the line.
well,
And then,
Kenny,
yes, sir.
and on that front, just 2 points.
Yep.
What people claimed they were voting on mostly in the last election was the economy.
Yes.
Prices are still not gone down from what people where they were when he took office.
Right.
Inflation still exists, and his tariffs haven't hit yet. So that's part
Yep.
the economy on one side, and then on the other side, uh, the most significant working class improvement he made was with Latino voters. And I actually am excited every time I see them do an ICE raid because I just don't believe that some of these Latinos are going to be as happy come a year from now with all that new money ICE just got to go after not the criminals, but abuela, grandmama down the street. I just don't believe that the Latino voters are going to sit there and be happy with that, but we
I
shall see.
I totally disagree with you. I think naturalized Latino citizens are huge on illegal immigration and deporting people. People I've talked to, they're like, we came in here the right way. We don't want people coming in here the wrong way. So I'll disagree with you on that, Chris.
You know what we should
Yep.
do for a subsequent call is see if we can find any polling on just that segment that you mentioned.
Okay. That's a
Because
good
it
idea.
won't take a high percentage of them to flip what was a razor thin election in every swing state.
Okay. We'll try and get some polls on that. All right, so last topic, and then I want to get to people's questions. I found, and this has been hanging around now for the last few months, but there's an article also in the Washington Post. I grabbed most of my stuff off the Washington Post today, folks. I usually read the Times, the Post, and the Wall Street Journal. Um, so how Zoran, quote unquote, the destroyer, Mamdani, is teaching Dems to lose. That was this article. And basically, in the article, it was saying how the mainstream, if we want to call them mainstream Dems, are not endorsing the guy. They don't know what to do with this guy. But the Bernie Sanders and the Elizabeth Warrens and the AOCs are endorsing him and they love his energy. But the problem is that energy is also pushing a more left message, which seems not to be a winning message based on the last election. So, and of course, the Republicans want this guy. They're looking at this guy as the greatest gift in history in terms of he's going to become mayor of New York City, and they're just going to make him. The Republicans will make Mandani the poster child of the Democratic Party, and that's where the problem comes in for the Dems. How do they deal with this guy when you have known commodities in Bernie Sanders, in Elizabeth Warren endorsing this guy. And like, where does the Democratic Party, how does the Democratic Party handle that when when the Republicans come after them and say, see, you supported a communist? They're not gonna say socialist, obviously, they're gonna say communist, and he wants to defund the police and all of those issues that they're just gonna regurgitate and use Mandani as the poster child for the Democratic Party. What do you think about it, Chris?
I think that I can come up with a narrative to debunk anything he says in distance. Hakeem Jeffries is never going to endorse him, I predict. He's smarter than that. And I believe that people like Gavin Newsom are sufficiently skilled politicians to put Mondani and New York in a box. And furthermore, a skilled Democratic politician can afford to almost throw Mondani
Right,
under the bus because guess what? He's still going to carry New York State even if he does.
right.
So I'll put it this way: any Democrat running for president who can't isolate the Mondani effect is stupid, and it will be, in my view, as stupid as Kamala Harris was when she couldn't figure out how to get certain other narratives that were hung around the Democrats' neck, like the bathroom thing
Yeah,
and the sports, who's on sports teams thing,
right.
and and it will make that person as dumb as the same person who said on The View, "Nothing comes to mind."
Yeah. What do you have to say,
All I'll
Dean?
say, oh, yeah, I was just going to say, all I'll say is that I, if the progressive wing of the Democratic Party just remains loud, not large, then I agree with everything that Chris just said. I think, this is New York politics and it can be localized to New York or kind of coastal elite type of thinking. If, on the other hand, that there has been this buildup of liberal socialist energy that has been turned away in the last several Democratic primaries. And this is just so. In other words, Bernie being ousted by rule changes, or Bernie-like candidates being ousted because of rule changes. If this is bubbling to a boiling point now, then I don't know if if they'll be able to compartmentalize it. And I would say, as evidence, um, if I still can't believe Kamala Harris didn't pick Josh Shapiro as her vice president. And if that was more her, then Chris is right. She just couldn't navigate the waters. If that was the party as a whole, and I think it was more because I don't think she was making very many decisions there. I think it was the team that was making decisions. I think this Zamdani issue is, or, I'm sorry, Mamdani issue is much bigger than the Democrats let on.
Okay, I'm gonna call on people. I'll just cap it off with this thing. In fairness to Kamala, I think she did, even though it was a bad decision, she picked Walls because she didn't like the ship. I think from what I read, Shapiro was a little too tough for her, and he wasn't too enthusiastic either.
I've
So,
heard he didn't want to be her number two.
right, exactly.
I wouldn't have wanted to be her number two.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I'm going to call in my good friend Evan. Evan, let everybody know where you're at, and let me just pin you here. Let everybody know where you're at, and then what's on your mind today.
I'm in Long Island,
Okay.
and I got a couple of bullet points, but the last one I promise has a little hint of levity to it. So I'll try and be quick because I usually speak too long. On flag burning, I think everyone agrees it's a silly issue. It's unconstitutional to try and ban it, but I don't think there's any argument that makes someone look more foolish than if they burn the flag because they
Yep.
look like an idiot, and the people that are burning it for their support, they've already got it. So as I find it detestable, like Rick Monday did for any baseball fans. I think it hurts the argument of the person who's burning the flag. The second one is Chris. Hi, I haven't seen you before. I'm sorry. Um, you said before the country's not happy, and this is I never understand when any politician says the country. By definition, you're saying half the country. So whatever it is you're talking about, it's almost in general, it's half the country, except for maybe these rare 80-20 issues. You talked about the black cities. Why doesn't he go to Memphis and St. Louis? I've been in Memphis many times, spent a lot of time in Baltimore because my kid went to school there. If I lived in Memphis, I would desperately want the National Guard there. And one of the huge problems, if you deal with law enforcement, one of the huge problems is, yes, black people obviously want the crime down, but they're so suspicious of the police that they don't cooperate with the police. And you can argue.
So you think they're going to cooperate with the National Guard?
No, no, no. My only point is, you said hire more officers in a
Yeah.
perfect world, which would be wonderful. They tried doing that in Baltimore. They didn't get a great response. Um, the problem is that the level of crime, especially in Memphis, is so out of control and so violent that I don't believe a conventional police force can handle it. And you probably know more about Memphis than I do. I've just been there 4 or 5 times, and I'm not sure what Elvis was thinking. Um, the Kenny, you said Trump doesn't pay his contractors in a dismissive kind of way. To me, it's one of his despicable qualities when you don't pay your bills. I was with a bunch of contractors last night who all said we would never work with that putz because he doesn't pay the last 10% you're not getting. I think it's an absolutely. I mean, Trump's got a lot of disgusting qualities. That's just one of them, and I don't know why everyone kind of just writes it
Yeah, I
off.
wasn't trying to
Especially a
poop.
lot of his followers, by the way, right? The working class,
Yeah,
those are the
yeah.
people he wouldn't pay.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to poo-poo it. I was just making the point that that was the thing they could hang him on, and he just got through it like it was nothing against the 17
I
Republicans.
got it.
Yeah,
Um, the issue with respect to Hispanics are adamantly, my understanding, adamantly pro legal immigration and not as upset as I would have expected them to be about the ICE raids. They take like the Cesar Chavez approach, which is, we want legal immigration to protect our workers. And Mamdani, if he's as bad as de Blasio, and I can't imagine Mamdani not getting elected. De Blasio was an absolute disaster. Um, God help us with Mamdani. But the last one, with a little hint of levity to it. So, Chris, you mentioned about how people aren't, and I'm sorry if I have this wrong, but you'll get the general point. If people aren't able to go out with their FU shirts on, right? You said something about that. So I have a friend who's to the right of Attila the Hun, and he went to a Yankee game the other night, and he had on a shirt to the Yankee Red Sox shirt. So he wore a red shirt, and on the back of it, it says "Impeach this" with 2 fingers up. The Yankee security forced him to either take off the shirt, which would have been an ugly scene, or go to the gift shop and buy a new shirt, which he did. I actually have the video of it. If I knew how to post it, I would. But it just goes in line with what you were saying. So the Yankees were not very appreciative of his. And by the way, it's a picture of Donald Trump doing this. So the Yankees were not so appreciative of that type of behavior.
yeah. Excellent. Good stuff. Andres, let me unmute you and pin you into our chat. There we go. What's going on, my friend? You're
Uh,
back. So where you just tell her you were traveling yesterday.
I was traveling all weekend. I had to do it was Ukrainian Independence Day on Sunday, so
Hmm.
I didn't do every event. I didn't do Hawaii and Maine, but plenty of cities I had to visit. I started with Thursday with the mayor's office here in New York City, but then did a big event in Chicago and a couple of stops along the way back. So unfortunately, I missed a lot of these conversations. I was just raising my hand earlier because of my absent friend from Ohio, bringing up Bernie Sanders. I know a lot of people were brought into the political activism by Bernie Sanders, but there's technically wasn't rule changes in 2016. There were some proposed changes in 2018. So when we say that Bernie Sanders was prevented from going up to president because of rule changes, that's more of people, the kind of people that I don't listen to you know, whether it's a Lee Camp or Aaron Mate or crazy people that are radically anti-Israel and anti a lot of things American, but then they bubble up and have these conspiracy theories online that things could have been different if but for one thing or another.
Did he
Uh,
just call me crazy?
yes, I totally agree.
Okay.
Anybody from Ohio. Anybody who makes a Flacco a starting quarterback.
Oh no, he went there. He went there.
No, but I also wanted to comment on the vice presidential thing from 2024 election. If you think that a pick of a vice president is what changes the election for you, then you're on the losing side. The message was lost. There were too many factors ganging up on the Kamala campaign or the Democratic campaign in general, given the fact that it was the incumbent campaign, and there was just too much negative going into it. And we saw that with the fact that less people voted in that election than they did in the previous election. So I believe it was the negative messaging really that killed that campaign. People didn't, and you guys mentioned The View and other things, people didn't feel that there was enough that they would be voting for. And so many of them decided to stay home. I don't know how Josh Shapiro, who would have actually benefited the Kamala campaign specifically on the issue that really killed them in swing states like Michigan, which is the Middle East. I just don't.
You don't think she'd have a better shot at getting Pennsylvania if they have the Pennsylvania governor?
That's not enough. You need more than Pennsylvania. And listen, they got Minnesota.
On Minnesota.
Which they were going to get anyway.
It could have been tight. Hillary had that issue with picking Tim Kaine for Virginia. Only wanting the one state. You need to aim for more than one state. And I don't think that in the end, I don't think that it's really picking the right person. I think if you're looking for reasons why your candidate lost, then I think you need to underscore your candidate lost, and it can't be one of these decisions that did it. It was as a whole. And
so Andre, take a shot at the larger question then that I posed. Is it that the progressive wing is just more activist, more loud, and they're not that large, or is they are growing?
What you're interpreting as the progressive wing, or what the party is, because this Cracker Barrel thing, people are like, oh, look at what Democrats did, or the Sydney Sweeney thing, right? No elected Democrat talked about Sydney Sweeney, and it was all that was on right-wing media for over a month. So is that the responsibility of a party leader to really talk about, like, is Chuck Schumer supposed to put out a statement about what he thinks about Sydney Sweeney, as opposed to elected officials in the Republican camp who were talking about this as if there was an assault on this most highly sought after actress and her jean company that made gangbusters in terms of how much money they were making because of this campaign. So I think it's just a matter also of what you interpret as coming from the Democratic Party and what is generally attributed to the left or the woke. And is that just some people online talking out of their college dorm rooms, or is that the actual party? And I think we've blurred the line so much with Republican stances on things as well as Democratic stances on things that it just becomes indecipherable in trying to figure out what you're actually voting for.
I'll give you a great website. Oh, sorry. Last point. Andre, I'll give you a great website to go to. Yeah. And Matt Glenn is the gentleman's name from Third Way. If you just Google Third Way, and they're more of a moderate. I don't know a lot about him, but he was on Two Way Tonight last week, and they talked about what the differences are. Hey, what we need to do as a party, the Democrats, in order to recapture kind of our centrist messaging. And so that's the definition that I would use in that article that I think you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, I listen, Problem Solver Caucus, the middle of the road is my bread and butter. They're the only ones who get things actually done in Washington. But that's not who gets elected a lot of times. And those are the guys who are often women and men who are often on the needle's edge about whether they win or not. They have been invariably winning the last couple of cycles. People seem to do want to have the moderates, especially in a 50-50 kind of country. But it's all about whether they can get to the general election. And that's the real problem, because more often than not, we're getting extreme candidates on both sides in the primaries.
Andres, I'm going to ask you two questions. First, what do you think about Mondani and being? Do you think he's going to win? And then do you think he's going to be the poster child for the Democratic Party.
I think Mandami's going to win because there's nothing demonstrating that anybody has
Can beat
any
him, right?
resistance against him.
Yeah.
As far as being the poster child, it's anything that Donald Trump says is the poster child. So it could be Chicago, which again I was just in. No need for federal troops. It could, and I agree with Chris. I don't know if he's still here, but
Yeah, Chris is here.
Appearing on sorry, I didn't see you down there, appearing on international television, it's very clear who President Trump is signaling out.
Yes.
It's people of color, but specifically black women leaders across the country, whether they're on the Fed, whether they're mayors. That is being read loud and clear in terms of international media, whether Americans agree to it or not. So whether we perceive it as being targeting of black women leaders in this country, it's being perceived that way in other parts of the world. And so for me, it's always good to be aware how other people see us, because sometimes they give us perspective that we're not seeing. But I think even in this country, as Chris points out, there are people that are very much understand who's being targeted in the verbal attacks by President Trump, and that may very well turn out to be something that hurts him or his party in the 26th election. But we still have this year's election to get through.
Yeah. Lastly, Jace, do you want to hit us with some Ukraine information? I know they've been fighting back. I brought up yesterday that seems like they've been having success attacking Russia's energy grid, I guess, or oil, when they're attacking. So you want to comment? You want to give us some Ukraine information?
I think the biggest thing. So I'm going to jump on for another interview at 10
Yep.
o'clock here Eastern. But the questions I'm getting over the weekend is what happened. Like, we had a massive international summit, and this is not just Ukrainian journalists, but European carriers as well. They're asking, like, everything dropped. 3 world leaders dropped their August vacations to get to the White House and have this conversation, and nothing has come of it since then.
Yeah.
I think the next steps are going to have to be in September. Zelensky has said that he will call for additional summits of people in Europe if President Trump doesn't want to have anything going forward. And for President Trump and Vice President Vance and their rhetoric, they're going to have to explain why an American company was hit in Western Ukraine
And he
without
didn't do anything. Didn't even acknowledge it.
no repercussions, really.
Yep.
600 people were in the building at the time. Those aren't all Americans, but this was the rhetoric brought out with the minerals deal, saying that you don't need a security guarantee. You have our businesses. Russia wouldn't dare attack us. And this goes back to Afghanistan, right? If they could do it there, they could do it anywhere. If they can attack an American company in Ukraine, they can attack an American company anywhere. Where is the peace through strength? And that's just a question that's happening, and somebody has to address it. It could be Trump, it could be somebody else, but somebody has to address it.
100%. Thanks for that. Okay, Evan's the only one with his hand raised. So, you didn't want to speak. Oh, I didn't lower your hand then. Okay. All right. So, anybody want to throw in a last comment before we send this on the road? In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to force somebody to comment. I'm going to bring somebody in, and they're going to have to speak whether they like it or not.
Volunteer, be voluntold.
Yeah. Michael, go give us some information. What's going on, buddy?
Well, it's kind of interesting what's happening here in the mayor's race in Minneapolis. I've got here late, so I don't know if anyone brought that up, but it seems that there's the contention was previously that there weren't any problems with elections or voting or anything else. And lo and behold, what we found is the Democratic Party in Minneapolis are contending that there was fraud and mismanagement of their election for the mayor. And so they just recently threw out the young fellow from Somalia, kicked him to the curb. And now they're going to have a revote because of election fraud.
Yeah, I was
I don't
in.
know if you've talked about that,
No,
but
we didn't. We
that's
didn't talk about it.
interesting.
Yeah, it's that's very interesting. I was in. Jackie and I were in St. Paul for a few days last month, and I had to take Uber around because my car had broken down. I had it in the shop. Long story short, so I didn't realize like the Somali population in St. Paul is huge. It's a very big faction, and talking to the Uber drivers, very interesting how, they know the city and they know the politics because you got the capital there and everything. It's just kind of very, I found it pretty fascinating.
Yeah, there's I think three large communities, and this started clear back. Oh, it's been going on for about 20 years. I've been here in Minnesota for a little over 30, and a lot of refugee resettlement, a lot of community angst that came about with putting refugees in communities without telling the communities ahead of time and those kind of things. I was involved in some of those discussions. The very agencies that helped that happen then wanted to come in and contract with the communities to help solve the cultural crisis that was a result. So I thought that was interesting. But now we're seeing that in Minneapolis in the mayor's race, and I thought it was very interesting what they did with Somalian fellow who has a very large following there, but they took him out of the race very undemocratically, it seems.
Yeah. Do we know what the reasons are for that? What they say?
Yeah, they're talking about voting irregularity, election fraud, violation of their rules
But
and bylaws.
but
Evidently,
what's the source of the election fraud? Are they stuffing ballots? What's the
yeah, I'm not sure farther into that, but it had to do with kind of some backdoor uh, smoky room kind of dealings. And then when it got publicized, they had to retract it. And the former mayor, the current mayor of Minneapolis, was shut out, and so now they're going back. And that's all I know about it, really. Um, the state fair is going on here, so a lot of other news then gets pushed out. So
Right, right. And that's a big deal there. Okay, well, it's now 10 o'clock. So we're going to keep, I'm going to stop the recording and then Haley's going to be the host with Alan for the post show. I got work to do, so I'm probably going to dip out. But another good show. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Dean. And Dean, thanks for coming on for your 2 days. Enjoy your time with your daughter. Chris, you'll be back with us, I hope. And then we'll figure out how we're going to do maybe I got to talk to Haley and we'll work out a schedule on who's going to co-host the next few shows with us. Deborah might want to come back in as well. So thanks everyone for being a part of this. Like I said, if you want to stay on and chat, just stay on. Hey, like I said, I'm going to turn over everything to Haley and Alan. They'll be and then I'm going to set it so that you guys can all unmute yourselves and this way you don't have to raise hands or whatever. Okay, thanks everyone. Haley, I'm gonna make you the host now. I'm gonna stop the recording and let me just do that. There we go.